Welcome to this PubMed tutorial on understanding and using MeSH. Upon completion, you'll understand how MeSH is organized and utilized. You'll be able to deconstruct a MeSH record page and know how the record features can be applied in a search. And then contrast a MeSH subject heading search versus a keyword search using the same terminology. Let's begin by discussing what is MeSH. And MeSH is a thesaurus of subject heading terms developed by the National Library of Medicine. You might ask, how is it used? Well, MeSH is considered a controlled vocabulary because the subject headings are predefined, which allows for consistent use and application by all indexers. And this is how it works. An indexer reads and analyzes the articles to determine what is the article about. Then they assign several subject headings, but the primary subject areas are indicated by an asterisk in the PubMed record. How is MeSH organized? Well, MeSH is often referred to as the MeSH tree. There are 16 main categories or broad subject areas. These branch out into narrower subject areas. An indexer assigns the most appropriate term as defined from the narrowest branch. Some terms are appropriate within more than one main branch. And like a tree, the MeSH is a living organism that continually updates and revises to keep current and neatly coordinates changes so that the act is seamless. What are the benefits of searching with MeSH? Well, the use of MeSH and its controlled nature and indexer analysis enhances the retrieval of articles with the same aboutness. So a topic will be tagged with a precise heading, regardless of the variety of keywords you might enter to describe it. Where do you find MeSH? Well, an easy way to access MeSH is directly on the PubMed homepage. The link will take you directly to the MeSH database. So you might wonder, how do you keep these databases straight? Well, here's the point of distinction. MeSH is an index of subject headings. Subject headings are applied to article records. Articles are searched for within PubMed for their citations. From the PubMed homepage, we can get to the MeSH databases beneath Explore. The MeSH database is one of NCBI databases. PubMed is another. Recall when we searched PubMed in the basic tutorial that we searched the concept diabetes. We searched it as a keyword and it applied automatic term mapping. In this case, we'll search diabetes directly in MeSH. This is the MeSH results page for our search. Diabetes mellitus had 102 results. You'll notice that diabetes mellitus came to the top of the page, and this is what automatic term mapping mapped to. But if you scroll through the record, you'll see that there are other terminologies that might be more applicable. Scrolling further, we see diabetes gestational, diabetes type 2, and diabetes type 1. Would one of these more specific terms be more accurate for our search? Understanding MeSH organization can help you decide. To get a better understanding, we'll take a look at the record of diabetes mellitus and click on the title to access. This is the record for the heading diabetes mellitus. You'll notice that on the right-hand side there's a PubMed search builder and there are link outs to other content areas. We're going to focus on the record itself. Within the record, the heading is first indicated. And below, you'll find the scope note of that heading, which defines that heading and the parameters to which it can be assigned to an article. Below the heading are the subheadings. These are topical areas particular to that heading listed, so it'll vary depending on which heading we're looking at. Not all headings will have a subheading, such as diet therapy. Like headings, subheadings are also defined. To see their definitions, you can click here. It is perfectly fine, though, to run a search without these subheadings. In fact, I recommend that your initial search be run without them. If your result set is too large, then consider adding subheadings. If you want to restrict to only those results where the heading is primary or a major heading for the article, select the box. If you do not want PubMed to search below the heading to the narrower terms beneath the heading that branches out below, then you must select the box because PubMed does this by default. Don't be confused if you're familiar with searching the CINAHL headings index or MeSH in the EBSCO Medline databases. EBSCO requires us to select when we want to search narrower terms below. Below this area is the See Also terms. These are headings related to this term, headings which have their own definition in the MeSH thesaurus. If you click on them, it will take you to that entry. Next, we'll see how the term is organized within the tree. Diabetes mellitus falls under two different branches under the category diseases: glucose metabolism disorders and endocrine system disorders. While the definition of diabetes mellitus remains the same, the context within the tree is different. Notice how the headings below each entry differ. By default, if I search diabetes mellitus, I search all of the narrower headings below. So information on type 1 diabetes and diabetes type 2 would be included on a MeSH search for diabetes mellitus. If a more specific heading applies to an article, the indexer applies the more specific heading. Research conducted on people with diabetes type 2 alone will receive that heading, not the broader heading diabetes mellitus. But if you do not check the box above and tell it not to use the automatic explosion feature and search the narrower headings below, then a search on diabetes mellitus will pick up the content on diabetes mellitus type 2. MeSH headings can help you weed through the jungle of citations. If you only want information relating to one of these more specific areas, by all means run a search on that area. Let's bring up the record for diabetes mellitus type 2. You'll notice the layout is the same and applies the same, but there's one particular area we didn't see in the last record. That would be entry terms. Entry terms are not See Also terms. Entry terms are not headings. They are not defined in MeSH. They are synonyms and related terms. As indicated in the basic search tutorial, as long as you allow automatic term mapping to be active and you enter one of these terms, it will automatically search this heading. This is the power of ATM and the power of the PubMed MeSH index. You can tailor your research and choose the subject heading you want to search. Here are your options. Add the term to the search builder and run your search within the MeSH database. Now search PubMed. Be mindful that when you search a MeSH heading from the MeSH search builder, it searches PubMed using exactly that heading. It does not do automatic term mapping. Now let's use the same terminology and search it as a keyword, and proceed to the advanced search to compare the searches. Comparing our searches. Our first search was on diabetes mellitus type 2 as a MeSH heading. When we search a MeSH heading, it searches all the narrower headings below, even though you don't see it in the search details, unless you check the box in the record and told it not to. When we search it as a keyword, it maps directly to that same MeSH heading because we use the same terminology. If we had used any of the entry terms, it would have done the same thing. But it also searched using the keyword as a phrase. So we have the best of both worlds, and we expanded a bit and got additional search results. I also ran a search just on diabetes to show you, as I did in the basic search, that it maps to the MeSH heading diabetes mellitus, and it also maps to the MeSH term diabetes insipidus. You can appreciate the impact of these searches when I shrink up the search details, and you can take a closer look at the actual search results. Knowing how MeSH is structured, knowing how it operates, and how to use it can help you tailor your research to best meet your needs. If you have any questions about using MeSH in your research, contact your librarian.